Tonight on Bridge City News, Prime Minister Trudeau says he plans to talk directly to U.S. President Trump in the coming days about his order to stop 3M from exporting medical masks to Canada. A firm in Washington state is now making medical face visors using a 3D printer to help ease the shortage of masks. And one man has been arrested after a deadly stabbing spree on the streets of a French town this morning. The French Interior Ministry is calling it a terrorist incident.
Your nation, your province, your southern Alberta. From the heart of Lethbridge, it's Bridge City News with Paul Arthur.
Good evening. Thanks for joining us. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau this morning announced more financial support aimed at helping vulnerable Canadians through the COVID-19 pandemic.
No one should have to choose between being somewhere they're unsafe and risking getting COVID-19. That's why we've invested $40 million for women's shelters and sexual assault centres across the country. And for Indigenous women and children fleeing violence, we're providing $10 million for emergency shelters. For other shelters, we've boosted funding for the Reaching Home program by over $157 million. This will help buy things like physical barriers or rent new space to keep people safe.
Today's announcement follows Friday's commitment of $100 million for organizations that help get food to Canadians who can't afford or have limited access to groceries and other basic necessities. Nationally, more than 1,000 new cases of the virus have been reported today, for a total of 13,858. The Canadian death toll from COVID-19 has now reached 228. Prime Minister Justin Trudeau says he plans to talk with President Donald Trump about White House orders to Minnesota-based 3M to stop exporting its surgical-grade face masks. Trudeau says he's not looking at countermeasures against this move by the U.S., but rather he believes the countries can come to a diplomatic solution.
In the next 48 hours, we will be receiving a shipment of millions of masks by a chartered cargo flight. We're also working with provinces to transport their medical supplies when possible. Items ordered by Quebec will be on this flight. Our government has also leased a warehouse in China to help collect and distribute these items as quickly as possible. And going forward, the flights we're chartering to get the materials here include Canadian companies Cargojet and Air Canada. We recognize that our countries are deeply interlinked in sometimes very complex ways. The necessary goods and services that flow back and forth across our border keep us both safe and help us on both sides of the border. We are continuing to engage in constructive discussions with different levels within the administration to highlight that the U.S. will be hurting itself as much as Canada will be hurting if we see an interruption of essential goods and services flow back and forth across the border. We continue to demonstrate that this is a good thing for both of our countries, and we look to continue to ensure that essential supplies get across the border.
Alberta announced an additional 107 confirmed cases in the province yesterday, bringing our total number to 1,075. There were also 5 more deaths for a total of 18, and a ban has been put in place on visitors to hospitals. Premier Kenney also had a very frank response to U.S. President Trump's decision to keep masks from being shipped to Canada.
If I had a chance to speak to President Trump, I would remind him about Canada's solidarity following 9/11 and in the global fight against terrorism. We have made very real sacrifices to stand by our American friends and allies. And as a Canadian, I am insulted by the decision announced today to block the export of critically needed medical equipment that we need to fight the pandemic here in this country. And I think it's short-sighted because the United States ultimately is a net importer of this kind of equipment. But it also underscores why we must produce our own critical equipment here at home, because apparently we can't even count on our closest friend and ally to be a supplier. That's why, one of the reasons why we've launched the Bits and Pieces program today, again, calling on our experience in history during the Second World War, when the entire Canadian economy became geared up to support the effort. Suppliers, small and large, all played some role in that. That's why it was called the Bits and Pieces program.
Kenny says the new program has brought in more than 1,100 offers of support from private and nonprofit organizations over this past week. Police in Delta, BC say it was troubling to catch 2 people this week allegedly reselling boxes of N95 respirators and surgical masks at exorbitant prices. They say a constable found an online ad offering the respirators at $15 apiece plus a $300 delivery fee. Police then set up a sting, and they say both sellers were given $500 bylaw tickets and forced to give up the medical supplies. The owner of a 3D print and design firm in Washington State has developed a medical visor and face shield that's easy to make. The design of the visor has been approved by the U.S. National Institutes of Health.
This started when we realized that hospitals here are running out of equipment. We work with hospitals in developing countries that don't have enough equipment, and it gave us some expertise about how to quickly adapt to resource shortages. If you have a 3D printer at home, or if you have one in your business, you could be making useful medical devices right now. Hospitals, healthcare centers need this kind of personal protection equipment, but don't forget home healthcare workers, delivery drivers, reporters who have to run around and talk to people.
Along with all of the outpouring support we've seen from the community, from everywhere around the country, it's incredibly impressive that somebody came up with this to allow us to be able to do our jobs a little bit better. It's absolutely fantastic.
Ontario Premier Doug Ford says tens of thousands of lives are at stake when it comes to obeying public health measures like social distancing and self-isolation. To drive home the message, another emergency alert went out this afternoon saying only essential workers should leave home unless it's for getting groceries or other absolutely necessary reasons. However, pandemic experts are cautioning Canadians not to panic, saying the province's projection models only provide a general guide for policymakers. They don't necessarily predict the future. Truck drivers provide a very necessary service to the community, and as Micah Quinn explains, the Lethbridge trucking industry is taking the news of COVID-19 in stride and sharing positivity during this tough time.
Kevin Coy has been a trucker for almost 20 years and says that for him, COVID-19 has not affected him as much as some people might think.
We're secluded, we're in our own trucks, windows are rolled up most of the time, and in a given week I may meet 3 people. 4 people total. You know, the customs officer at the window, the person that unloads my load, and the person that reloads my trailer, and then customs again on the way back. And that's about it. Other than maybe going shopping once a week for groceries, I try to limit my contact with other people quite a bit.
Coy says that social distancing has been enforced for truckers.
We've been issued disinfectant sprays, wipes, Clorox wipes, hand sanitizers. We're also aware of the social distancing requirements by the Canadian government, the Alberta government, and Canada Customs. They all, give us their say.
CJD Trucking says that COVID-19 has changed the way truckers go about their day-to-day.
They're finding out what places along the line do have food so that they can access food, washrooms, and shower facilities, and that's been a challenge.
Nelson says he chooses to seek the positive messages instead of the negative surrounding truckers.
And I think the negative impact on social media has caused some people to change their minds. You know, it used to be you couldn't walk up to a Tim Hortons or a McDonald's to the drive-through, and that's changing. I see that as well. There's positive on there, and that's what we choose to focus on, is the positive.
With trucking being an essential service and the Government of Canada keeping the U.S. and Canada border open, it will be business as usual for truckers. For Bridge City News, I'm Micah Quinn.
The uncertainty about the future and having children at home is prompting some parents to consider homeschooling as an option this fall. Homeschooling associations are seeing an increase in inquiries, and that's not a surprise to Toronto-based family therapist and author Alison Schaefer. She says parents are getting fed up with the public education system in general. Schaefer says there could also be an increase in online schools. French prosecutors say a man wielding a knife entered a tobacco shop and a nearby bakery in the town of Romans-sur-Isère and stabbed one of the owners and customers, killing 2 and wounding at least 4 others. Witnesses say the man also attacked people on the street. Police have arrested the suspect, who is being described as a 33-year-old man from Sudan. Government officials are calling it a terrorist incident. Recapping one of our top news stories, Prime Minister Trudeau says he plans to talk directly to U.S. President Trump in the coming days about his order to stop 3M from exporting medical masks to Canada. And a look at weekend weather. We should begin to warm up later this week, but we still have a bit of snow on the way. A few clouds tonight with a low of -9, and for tomorrow, periods of snow, but that should taper off in the early afternoon with a high of +4. There are many who want our healthcare system to stay the way it is, but there are those who believe that we should also allow some private healthcare to help alleviate wait times. Hal Roberts spoke with Derek Frum with the Constitution Foundation on this issue. That interview is coming up next.